What's good, y'all? I'm Stats with Evan, and I'm back to give you my predictions for every game on week 2 of the NFL slate. Now, as always, these picks are completely, totally, and 100% unbiased. That means I'm not basing these predictions off of which teams I like better or which players I like better. This is just based off of which team I think has a better chance of winning this game this week. That's it. With that being said, let's get into it. Now, as always, we start with the Thursday night game, and this week we got the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Cleveland Browns. Now, in my opinion, week 2 is the toughest week for predictions because I only have one game to work with for all the teams. We learned more about some teams last week than we did about others, and this game is a perfect example of what I'm saying. Last week, we learned that the Bengals are a work in progress, while all we really learned about the Browns last week is that they're not a Super Bowl contender, because let's be honest, there's not too many teams that's going to be having big fun in Baltimore this season. I still think the Browns are a playoff caliber team though, so I'll go with Cleveland 31-13 over Cincinnati. And now we move to the 1 o'clock slate. We're going to start with the New York Giants and the Chicago Bears. Now this game could honestly go either way. The Giants were able to stay in the game until the last 5 or so minutes, despite their offensive line getting absolutely bullied by the Steelers last week. And the Bears needed a 21-point fourth quarter to beat Detroit. I'm going to say that again. A 21-point fourth quarter to beat the Lions. Now, there's two things you can't count on to happen every week. The Giants' run game being non-existent and a Bears comeback, so I'm taking New York in the upset 27-17 over Chicago. Up next, we got the Atlanta Falcons and the Dallas Cowboys. I exaggerate nothing when I say somebody's going to save their season on Sunday. The Falcons got absolutely picked apart by Russell Wilson last week, while the Cowboys missed opportunity after opportunity in LA. Honestly, I don't know how much longer I can expect the Cowboys offense to be stuck in neutral, and the Falcons look like a defense you could get well on, so I'm going with Dallas 38-20 over Atlanta. Up next, we got the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers. Now, I'm not going to waste too much time with this one. It's open and shut. The Lions had a win last week against the Bears and let it get away, and now they got to go to Green Bay to play the Packers. This is a situation in which the Packers have historically had a lot of success, and I see no reason why that can't continue this week, so I'm going with Green Bay 45-10 over Detroit. Up next, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans. This is a battle for first place in the AFC South, seeing as how both teams are tied for first place at the moment. Jaguars pulled off an impressive win against the Colts last week despite having 200 fewer yards on offense, and the Titans pulled out a gritty win in Denver despite an ejection by Rashaan Evans and 4 missed kicks by Steven Gostkowski. Between the two, while the Jaguars bend but don't break, they are vulnerable, particularly in pass defense, because they gave up 363 yards to an aging Phillip Rivers. So I'll say Ryan Tannehill takes advantage of that, and Tennessee wins this game 27-13 over Jacksonville. Up next, we got the Minnesota Vikings and the Indianapolis Colts. Two teams in need of a get-back game to come together in Indy. Both suffered bad losses last week, but for different reasons. However, the Vikings got out of their game without any major injuries. The Colts can't say the same, and Marlon Mack is now out for the season. After thinking this over, I'll say Minnesota beats Indianapolis for the first time since 1997. Vikings win it 34-20. Up next, we got the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. The Bills' AFC East campaign got off to a good start last week against the Jets when Buffalo was in the driver's seat pretty much start to finish, while the Dolphins' underdog season didn't quite get off on the same foot. Because struggle is not the word for what they did last week in New England. The Bills did suffer a number of injuries on defense last week, but now they face a quarterback in Ryan Fitzpatrick that threw 3 interceptions. 3. Add in an explosive offense for the Bills that the Bills have, and I'm going with Buffalo 30-13 over Miami. Up next, we got the San Francisco 49ers and the New York Jets. Both these teams have the same 0-1 record, but I'm getting different vibes about these two. The Niners are a good team who simply got outplayed down the stretch by another good team, the Cardinals, while the Jets are a team toward the bottom of the league. And yes, George Kittle is injured, but so is Le'Veon Bell. Simply put, all signs point to San Francisco, so that's where I'm going, 31-13 over New York. Up next, we got the Los Angeles Rams and the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I went back and forth on this game a lot. Now, while the Rams did get a win last week, the game was way closer than it needed to be. While the Eagles did lose last week, you have to figure injuries were somewhat of a factor. Not the entire reason they lost by any stretch of the imagination, because it wasn't enough to stop them from getting a 17-0 lead. But injuries still, they had a lot of them, so it is still worthy of the reference. Now, one thing I can trust is the Rams defense, which lived up to expectations last week. I like how the Rams defense matches up with the Eagles' banged-up offense, so I'll say LA snaps their 6-game losing streak against Philadelphia. Rams win it 24-13. Up next, we got the Denver Broncos and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, these two showed me a lot on Monday night. Both proved they have strong defenses, which should make for a gritty game on Sunday. However, the Broncos are suffering from a couple notable injuries on offense to Courtland Sutton and Phillip Lindsay, while the Steelers may be without James Conner. All in all, I see this as a low-scoring game, and I see Pittsburgh coming out on top 20-17 over Denver. Up next, we got the Carolina Panthers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this one's fairly straightforward. The Panthers didn't exactly play a bad game on Sunday, but they happen to be the odd man out in an absolutely stacked NFC South. An NFC South that also happens to include the Bucs. Despite the loss, Tampa's offense showed signs that they may be starting to find their footing. Add in a matchup against a defense that's not as strong as the one they faced last week, and I'm going with Tampa 38-17 over Carolina. Now we move to the 4 o'clock slate, and we start with the Washington football team taking on the Arizona Cardinals. This one also gave me a fair amount of back and forth. Both teams pulled off impressive upsets last week and showed they may be ready to take the next step forward. Washington's defense flexed their muscle with 8 sacks and 3 turnovers to beat the Eagles, while the Cardinals' offense, spearheaded by a career day from DeAndre Hopkins, blasted by the Niners. This creates a something's gotta give situation between the Washington defense and the Arizona offense. However, I'm noticing that just like the Eagles, the Cardinals may be without 3 of their starting offensive linemen, so I'm making this my upset of the week and taking Washington 24-20 over Arizona. Up next, we got the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, this one's open and shut. The Chiefs have one of the best, if not the best, offense in the league, and they're going into LA on extra rest, and now they face a Chargers team that struggled heavily against a rebuilding Bengals team. The Chiefs just severely outclassed the Chargers across the board, so I'm going with Kansas City 45-17 over LA. Up next, we got the Baltimore Ravens and the Houston Texans. Now, before I start, let me just say this. Whoever made the schedule does not like the Texans at all because, damn, Kansas City and the Ravens back-to-back, that's how y'all feel? Okay, well, the Texans had extra rest, but that's about the only advantage they really have here. The Ravens can match them point for point or just shut them down with that nightmare of a defense they had. In conclusion, Baltimore wins big 38-7 over Houston. And now we got the Sunday night game, the New England Patriots taking on the Seattle Seahawks. This is a very underrated matchup. On the one hand, Cam Newton had an impressive Patriots debut with his pair of rushing touchdowns, but on the other hand, Russell Wilson looks like an early MVP candidate as he and the Seahawks had their way with Atlanta last week. Now, while the Patriots do look like a decent team, I just think the Seahawks have them outclassed, so I'm going with Seattle 31-17 over New England. And last but not least, we got our Monday night game, the New Orleans Saints taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. The much anticipated first ever NFL game in Vegas. Now, while both teams lit up the scoreboard on their way to victory last week and both beat an NFC South team, I'm noticing different vibes from the two teams. Last week, the Saints were in control for most of the game against the Bucs, while the Raiders had a lot of back and forth with Carolina. What it comes down to is that the Raiders really weren't able to stop the Panthers' offense, so I don't like their odds against the Saints' offense, even without Michael Thomas. New Orleans takes this 34-20 over Vegas. Well, that's my predictions. Which ones do you agree with me on? Which ones do you disagree on? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, I'm Stats with Evan, and I hope you have a 100% day. See y'all later.